Hey folks, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to what is most certainly going to be our weekly Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken videos, because apparently y'all really dug the first episode, which is a big relief because so did I, and I was really looking forward to talking about this week to week. And yeah, you guys definitely ensured that we would be doing so. And that's because a lot of you guys showed last week's video on the premiere a ton of support, which is awesome. And I am now going to shout out those of you who shared last week's video over on Twitter. At LaDesbianIcon, at FireOtaku845, at Janame, at AnimeTrashBin, at KJ Creed, and at Bubblelubber. Thanks so much for sharing last week's video, everybody. It is super appreciated, and if you too would like to have your name shouted out in next week's Eizouken video, then be sure to share this video around on the internet, and then tag me at JoJo Talks Too Much over on Twitter, and I will be sure to shout your name out in next week's video. Also, I announced this yesterday, but the channel has merch now. I won't keep mentioning it all the time, but I'm gonna mention it in the next couple videos just because it's still relatively new. But yes, we have merch. Check the link in the description. I always recommend having a warm cup of tea at the end of videos, so I may as well sell some mugs. So yeah, check them out if you feel like it. You don't have to. And with that said, we're gonna go ahead and dig into the second episode of Keep Your Hands Off Eizouken, and I'm calling it Eizouken because that's what our main girl Asakusa says during the episode, and I'm just gonna trust that she knows the name of the thing. So yeah, gonna go with Eizouken. Specifically in this episode, there are 3 things that I want to talk about. Normally, I would go through the episode scene by scene, but I feel like that's been sort of making these videos drag out a little too long, and I do want to keep these anywhere between 15 to 20 minutes as opposed to like 25, like the last couple videos have been stretching to, so I decided it might be a little bit easier to sort of condense my thoughts into specific points that I want to hit on during each video, and in my opinion, there are 3 major parts to this week's episode of Eizouken. Those 3 being starting the film club, trying to actually make an anime, and Fujimoto-sensei. Let's go ahead and start with the whole film club part of the episode, because yeah, our group is not exactly trying to make live-action films, are they? They're very much obsessed with anime, but they can't join the anime club since Mizusaki's parents are so heavily against it, so they're gonna have to figure out a workaround. And Kanamori is the one who points out that while they can't all go join the anime club, they can start a club of their own and use that to make anime. However, the school's kind of against that. Since they already have an anime club, why would they need a second club that also makes anime? It's a little redundant as far as they're concerned. Still, I like the fact that the trio is already trying to find workarounds to help each other out, as Kanamori and Asakusa very well could have just joined the anime club and ditched Mizusaki since they've only really known her for like a couple days, which is cruel, yes, but I mean, they are high school students, so that's not exactly unheard of to be kind of dickish in high school. But no, they already really like Mizusaki, so they're gonna go out of their way to try to help her out, and they know that she wants to work on anime. So the concept of them starting a film club on the surface seems a little bit strange. Now, my initial thought was that the workaround would be that while the anime club focuses on TV anime, the film club could focus on filmed anime. Because there is a world of difference between animating for a TV series versus animating for a feature film. It is similar, yet at the same time, pretty different. However, that is not quite where we go. Instead, Kanamori basically suggests to just play along, to pretend like they're going to do a live-action film, when in actuality they will be using the school and the funds for having a club to basically just make the anime that they want to make and then explain it to the school later once it's done, which is very Kanamori, and she is my favorite, so I was like, right on, cool, I like this plan. But at the same time, I was sort of like, y'all are gonna get in some severe amounts of trouble later, especially considering the fact that I think the school, I think the teacher who they were speaking to, I can't remember his name, but he's like the goofier teacher between the 2 that we meet in this episode. And he'd said that they were willing to give them like, I can't remember the exact number, but it was enough to make me go like, ooh, you don't want to be playing games with that amount of money. The school could very easily get pissed at you for pulling the wool over their eyes if they find out that you're lying. But at the same time, in Kanamori we trust, and Kanamori in particular is sort of a highlight in the episode for me, but we'll get to that once we get into the whole trying to make anime part of the video. This is also where we meet Fujimoto-sensei, whose beard compels him to help the anime club, but I'm gonna save my thoughts on Fujimoto-sensei again for a little later in the video. But essentially, what happens is that Fujimoto decides to jump on as the faculty advisor for this trio, trying to make a film club, again, film in huge brackets. And we eventually see what will become our home base, the base of operation for Eizouken, and it is essentially a glorified shed. And it's funny because, of course, Mizusaki, who's like this rich girl, is like thrown off by like, oh, it's so chic. Look at the metal like sheets of wall, like that's so cool. That's awesome. Oh my goodness. Meanwhile, Kanamori and Asakusa are like, it's just metal sheets. Like it's really not that great. In fact, that's bad. Like if those are our walls, we're in trouble if it rains or if it gets too windy. It's not a great look. But that's very much Mizusaki's charm, isn't it? Like she's just sort of baffled and amazed by everything that she's seeing because she's a rich girl. She's used to that rich lifestyle. So now that she's interacting with things that are a little bit more middle class, she's a little bit confused, a little bit baffled, like seeing this shed. She's like, whoa. Now I have never personally had a club room outside of the school. That admittedly does seem cool. But the fact that they get a glorified shed really tells you where they're starting. It's basically just a total rust bucket. The sides of the walls are all like covered in literal rust. There's holes in the ceiling. There are two giant fans towards the one side of the wall, which is admittedly kind of cool and actually gave me vague Death Note vibes. If you've seen the ending of Death Note, you'll probably know the building I'm talking about, but it did give me vibes to the end of Death Note, which I was not expecting to find in Eizouken. Weird Death Note flashbacks, but I got them. Not intended, probably, but I did have them. You're nothing more than a crazy serial killer. That's all you are. Nothing more and nothing less. Thanks, Nier. God, that ending is burned into my brain for all time. Anyway, Eizouken. So yeah, what I'm trying to say is that the shed is definitely a little bit of a weird setup for the group, and I'm not super sure how the school expects them to fix the place up, but I suppose that's normal. We've seen many an anime that just sort of abandons kids in a club room and just says, figure it out, and walks away. So if we do have anybody who watches these videos who did go through Japanese high school, do tell. Is that a true fact? Would be curious to know. But like I said earlier, this is basically where Fujimoto-sensei dips the hell out and leaves the students to their own devices, and our trio do their best to try to make this room actually feel like a club room, and they begin cleaning. And in the midst of cleaning, we once again get a moment where Asakusa and Mizusaki's imagination get a little hypercharged, and by a little I mean a lot. And it's funny because anytime we get these like imaginary scenes, right, where Asakusa is like just going full tilt insane and just imagining the world as she sees it, I'm always sort of baffled by the fact that Kanamori also sees everything, because she doesn't strike me as somebody with an immense imagination the same way the other two have. So I'm always like intrigued when she's like, well, yeah, but then the friggin' roof would blow off and like the wind generated by the propellers would spin you around because you don't have any counterweight. And that scene did make me laugh because I was like, yeah, she's right. And as soon as I thought, yeah, she's right, that's when Midori started spinning around in a circle until she managed to get the gear to spin the other way as a counterbalance. That was really fun. I always find it really fascinating to see how Midori's mind is able to like make these different concoctions, these different devices that really aren't practical. Like they really don't seem practical. They don't seem like something we would actually see in the real world as like a common thing. Like that propeller belt that she's wearing in that scene, although admittedly awesome and very anime, it just doesn't seem like something that would actually happen. But I love the creativity of her mind, like the way that she thinks of these things. It's very A, high schooler, and B, anime. Because that's what I feel most of us did. We just imagined shit all day because it was boring to sit in class, so you'd rather imagine stuff. I know I did. Midori's just great. I love Midori. I relate too much to this character. I actually find her like really relatable. And it's fun watching her try to figure out like, how would this work and how would that work, to the point where even after taking like a massive tumble, she's like on the ground face first and she's still going like, and then the propellers would retreat on the inside in full back so that you could, like, walk around. And Mizusaki's like, oh my god, she's still going. Like, wow, that's fast. These three have such a perfect dynamic where, like, even when someone gets hurt, there is concern, but it's still, like, played for laughs. It's really solid. But yeah, like I said, Midori basically eats shit. She leans over the railing as she's pretending to fly in her imagination, and this is where we see the imagination world come tumbling down when reality sets in and she realizes that she really was leaning on a rusty railing that fell the hell apart, and she ate shit on the bottom of the floor. And it didn't look pleasant. Like, that fall looked like it hurt. That was pretty high up. I'm kind of shocked she wasn't more hurt. She just kind of bounces back up. But I mean, she is an anime character. As they say in the show later on, it's fictional, so they're fine. But yeah, I was surprised that she was okay. And this moment, I do think, is going to come into play pretty heavily next week, as it essentially serves as a cliffhanger, since the school basically tells them, like, hey, well, we're glad you're okay, but maybe don't post that anywhere, because it's fine. Like, we can pay for the damages, but if you post that somewhere, like, probably not a great look for the school. You know, we don't want to have to give you guys trouble for getting hurt or anything like that, so just don't worry about it. Just don't post it anywhere, essentially. And the three are like, yeah, sure, having already posted it online. But they're like, nobody's going to buy the clip, right? That would be ridiculous. And then, of course, the episode ends with Kanamori calling Mizusaki saying, like, so I just got a really big deposit into my bank account. Do you know anything about this? And Mizusaki's like, yeah, I can think of a couple reasons. And then it cuts to the Asakusa household, and Midori is just staring at the screen in utter shock as the family's eating dinner, and they all look at the screen, and it's Midori falling off the railing and eating shit. So I just imagine that the school is going to have some choice words for the students after specifically telling them not to do that. So I imagine that's going to cause some issues next week. And the second of three things that I want to talk about in this week's episode is the group trying their bestest to make an anime, which is a shockingly difficult feat, and the fact that the trio are even going to attempt it is pretty impressive, I gotta say. The other thing that I think is really impressive is the fact that Kanamori is more necessary to the trio than people may initially think. Just because she's not a big anime fan, I think a lot of folks are going to be like, why does the show even need Kanamori, blah, blah, blah. Like, if you were told the story from the outside looking in, that Midori is the background artist and Mizusaki is the character designer, it doesn't seem like Kanamori really has a place in there, but Kanamori is essentially acting as producer. She's trying to make sure that everybody actually sticks to the program and doesn't go full tilt insane. This is, I know a lot of people take issue with, like, producers and higher ups since they're able to kind of shift creative control. A huge example and a recent example would be Stars Align. Stars Align went off the rails because of producers meddling into the show, and it really kind of ruined the show by the end of it. And so I recognize that some folks take issue and umbrage with producers, but producers are very much necessary to keep creatives on track. Now, growing up, I was a big comic book fan. I read nothing but Marvel and DC, and very much still do. And I equate producers very closely with editors, basically having an editor just overhead telling you what you can and can't do. It's the same thing with manga. Most manga have an editor saying, like, do this, don't do this, you should lean into this direction, maybe avoid doing this. Like, just basically somebody there giving you advice and guidance. That way the creative person doesn't go full out insane, because most creative folks just want to make stuff, and sometimes you lose track of how the thing arrives at a conclusion. You kind of need a producer just to steer the project in the right direction. That said, producers and editors can forget that they're not the creative ones, and they should maybe leave a lot of the story in the hands of the creators, but that's a topic for another day. I think Kanamori is the perfect kind of producer, and I can actually see Kanamori growing up and being an anime producer, if I'm totally honest. She just has the mentality for it, and she's really able to kind of steer these two in the right direction, and knows when to let them go off and go crazy. She even says, like, right now it's best if I let these two just be in that imaginative world, and then I'll pull them in and try to figure out some of the more specific stuff a little bit later. I think Kanamori is incredibly important to the trio, more so than you may think going in from episode 1. Mind you, we're only on episode 2 and Kanamori's already proving how important she is, but that's because Kanamori's the best character, so there you go. Kanamori's even important when it comes to getting them the equipment, since Midori tries her bestest to convince the school to let them borrow some desks, since they're gonna need some proper anime desks to actually draw on cells and make everything work. And Midori is a little too excited and says the word anime to the teacher, who they're not supposed to say the word anime to, and he gets pissy. And Kanamori has to basically dig their way out of it by being like, hey, listen, you didn't hear that, okay? That's not what she says, but that's basically what she says. Just like, let us do the thing, or I swear to God, like, I will bring this whole school down on your head. And that's not exactly what she says, but it's what she intended. And so the teacher relents and kind of gives them the key, and they gotta go find the desks. And what instead they find, and this was a pleasant surprise, is they actually find this old hidden camera back by the river of the school, because the school also has a river, because the background art in the show is friggin' stellar, and you get cool shit like a building beside a river on a school grounds, whatever, it's cool. This building that they stumble across is also really dope. It has like this windmill hanging over top of the river, which looks really cool, although the windmill is facing the wrong way, which I find to be kind of funny. But they even point that out in the show, like, it's facing the wrong way, but like, oh well, whatever. And we see inside the shed this like big honking camera pointing down at what you can tell is meant to be like sheets, like somebody was trying to make an anime in this room. And that's kind of neat. So there was like either the anime club before them, or maybe a totally different club. I don't really remember what the teacher said, but basically there was leftover equipment in this room, and somebody was trying to animate the windmill that they saw out of the window. And I thought that was really cool. And they explained like how the big honkin' camera works, and like how the cells work, how you place like a character design over top of a background design, and it just looks really, really cool. It's cool to see anime characters holding up animation cells. Like, I thought that was actually really kind of, I was like, whoa, this is a little trippy now. It's kind of like watching Shirobako, where you're watching anime characters making an anime, and you're like, whoa, whoa, to quote Keanu. I will admit though, a lot of it was some techno jargon that kind of went over my head. They were explaining it well, it's just I'm kind of an idiot, and I need things explained to be really slowly for me to get it, or I need to be reading it at my own pace. So there was parts where they were explaining like how the camera worked and everything, and I was just like, yep, awesome, I believe you. I'm just not that bright. But this leads up to the scene of the group deciding like, well, why don't we, like, what's up with the cells? Like, they don't look quite right. Why don't we fix it? Why don't we actually try to fix the cells of the old windmill and try to make this thing work? We can make these old sheets work. We can try to make the windmill look like it's actually moving, because to them it just didn't look quite right the way it was animated before they came into the room. And they actually like rework the old sheets, and they actually managed to get the sheets to work while Kanamori like flipping them. And there's even a line where like, oh, Kanamori's able to flip papers really well. That's interesting. Basically saying like she's like money crazy. Like she just flips stacks of money all the time, which I thought was kind of funny. But it again leads to another scene where their imaginations go insane. Basically at one point in their imaginary adventure, they blow up the side of a building. And Kanamori rightfully points out, like, shouldn't that have, like, knocked the whole friggin' building over? And that's when Midori turns and delivers my favorite line of the whole friggin' episode. It's fictional, so we're probably fine. And, yeah, I mean, that to me is, like, yeah. Like, I feel like I could explain most shows and series with that. Like, well, how did that character survive this? Well, it's not real, so... they're fine. Especially when it comes to anime, a lot of the time if it looks cool and it feels cool and you can feel that moment of hype, that surge of emotions, logic can tend to fall by the wayside. And that is very much prevalent in that scene where they blow up the building, because like, yeah, the building should have fallen apart, but nah, it's Eizouken, it's fictional, they're fine. And it leads to this really friggin' beautiful shot where Midori lets all the water run out of that building, and you see it sort of seep down into the city, the fictional city that they're pretending they're in. And they get on this dinghy that magically appears because, again, it's fictional, and they hop on the boat, and they ride off, and they go back towards the windmill, and you see the windmill in this beautiful shot with like a rainbow coming down, and the windmill's like picking up water as it spins, and it's this beautiful, beautiful shot. Unfortunately, it is ruined when the gang says like, did we draw this? And they're like amazed by it, and then the teacher bursts in, is like, I told you kids to hurry the hell up. Like, it's raining now. You can't even bring the damn desk to the room. Great job. We gotta go. Like, it's raining cats and dogs out here, and it did look gnarly, but the image of them on the boat looking up at the fictional windmill, and it was just like the fictional scene of them looking at the windmill was just really beautiful, and again just really stretches how much the imaginary scenes of Eizouken manages to get that sense of like whimsy, and just really captures the creative minds that these characters have. And I loved, and somebody pointed this out last week, and I didn't mention it in a video, so I'll mention it here. One of the other things I love is that when they're in that imaginary world, if you're listening to the audio design, it's not actual explosions or like real sound effects or anything. It's actually just Midori like making the noises. Like when the propeller's going, she's going like swat, 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 swat. Like she's making the noises herself, which is really freaking funny and really cute. It's just a really nice touch. You can tell Yuasa's handprints are like all over this show. Like this is very much a Yuasa show, and you can really tell. The third, final, and I promise quick thing that I want to talk about in regards to this week's episode of Eizouken is the introduction of Fujimoto-sensei. Now, if you guys remember my old JoJo's videos, every time a new character was introduced, I would look at their character design, I would look at specifically their color design, because I love like color meanings and trying to extrapolate like what the different colors on a character's design are meant to tell us about said character, what their character design in general is meant to say about a character. I like looking into that stuff. Now keep in mind, when I do this, I am going to be looking really deeply into things that maybe aren't that deep, but at the same time, proper character designers do put a lot of effort into their character designs. They're trying to tell you as much as they can with the design itself without having the character spell out their backstory for you. So I do feel like it's fun to go into character backgrounds, go into character designs and stuff like that, and try to figure out who the character is before we really learn much about the character, because it's fun to speculate. It's just speculation. I know some people say that I'm reaching when I do this kind of thing, but too bad. I want to do this, and don't worry, there's not a whole lot to Fujimoto-sensei, to be honest. So unfortunately, this wasn't like the best way to bring this segment of my videos back, but too bad. We're gonna analyze Fujimoto-sensei's design. Now, I gotta say that Fujimoto-sensei is vaguely film director-y, which is very much fitting with the rest of the episode. Fujimoto-sensei strikes me as sort of a young George Lucas, like George Lucas maybe around Empire or Jedi. Like that's sort of the vibe he gives me. The long and sort of shaggy hair with the big beard, and he's got the long sleeve shirt with the sweater vest. He just looks like a George Lucas type, you know, like he has that vibe to him in terms of his appearance. And I realize that that's kind of a stretch, but that is kind of the vibe that he was giving me. And it's funny too, because the beard, you see him like stroking the beard at one point going like, my beard is getting long, like blah, blah, blah. He seems sort of goofy, but he also seems sort of lackadaisical. Like he's the type of dude who you could see stroking his beard outside with a nice cup of tea, just sort of looking out into the distance, and you may ask like, Fujimoto-sensei, what are you thinking about? And he'd say, oh, nothing. Just stroking my beard. This design just kind of does strike me as a dude who maybe does have a lot going on in his mind, but at the same time, he has that sort of lackadaisical nature. It doesn't take much too seriously, sort of a laid-back kind of dude, but I want to point out that the red sweater is symbolic of his leadership skills. The color red typically denotes a lot of passion and fiery emotions, and it is pretty often associated with a leader type. See Power Rangers. And here that does actually fit pretty well. I gotta say that the darker, almost brownish red color of his sweater actually does fit in quite well with the mark of leadership. And it does make me kind of look at him more like a leader because he's wearing red, and red is typically worn by leaders, again, Power Rangers. And it does fit since he is meant to be the faculty advisor. So he's the type of person who they can turn to when they need something fulfilled, when they have a request they need, when they need guidance. It will be Fujimoto Sensei who's the one to guide them. And we see that he is sort of lackadaisical, but he is also very supportive. So that color choice, in my opinion, is really fitting. Watch next week, they're going to put him in a different colored sweater vest. Also, that sort of brownish red color could denote a lot of autumn colors and as well a lot of like sort of masculine qualities. Now, red doesn't necessarily mean like men only wear red, it just means masculine. It's a more masculine color. And red typically does denote like a sort of masculine leadership. He does sort of strike me as that sort of like autumny type of person. He's almost, you know, actually who he totally reminds me of, and I didn't even think about this until this moment. We're in mid-recording. For all we know, Fujimoto Sensei could be this show's Ron Swanson. That seems like a stretch to me, but like, I kind of want that now. He's not gonna be, but like he does sort of have that sort of autumny, masculine energy to him, this sort of laid back, lackadaisical, but still in general a leader that you can kind of turn to with and ask for advice. That's sort of the vibe I get from Fujimoto Sensei. And I want to see more from Fujimoto Sensei since he's barely in the episode, and like I said, doesn't give us a whole lot to go on, but I wanted to bring it up anyway because I just wanted to talk about character designs again because I haven't done that in a while and I like doing it. But on that note, everybody, I'm going to wrap up today's video here and happily give Eizouken's new episode a super solid A tier. So Eizouken is now 2 for 2 with 2 really impressive episodes. If it impresses me again, I'm pretty sure it's going to be anime of the season for me. And if I'm totally honest, it might already be that. And that's going to do it for today's video, everybody. So I hope you guys enjoyed. And before we go, as always, I have to give a big thank you to the good folks over on Patreon, especially those in the Earl Grey tier: Andrew W., Calvin A., Crowbar of Irony, Daniel G., Digger the Fox, Dominic G., Ionos, Urza, Ginkutaku, Godzilla Fan, No For Nothing, Maria Teresa, Marshall B., Mirth Mouser, Cell, Shadow Creative, Sipco Games, Somastan, Stephen G., Sakochi, Tristan G., and Verdon. A huge thank you to all of you in the T Squadron for your continued support, and if you too would like to join the T Squadron, then be sure to check out the first link in the description to check out our Patreon page, see all the cool rewards you can get over there, as well as access to our Patreon exclusive Discord for as little as $1 a month. And with that said, we're going to wrap up today's video, everybody, so thank you all once again for watching, and if you are feeling stressed out today, then you go have yourself a warm cup of tea, and I will talk to you all again real soon.